loss. Call the International Helpline, 866-482-LIFE, and talk with someone who has been where you are. Your call is confidential, 866-482-LIFE.
It makes me want to puke, Brian. I think that what you are doing is blasphemous.
Well, Tom, I just got to tell you, I am so heartened to hear you so worked up over blaspheming the name of Christ.
What does it say that Fox News is nicer to me than the lefties are? I didn't think the left was as mean as the right. They are.
I'd also like to apologize to you both for the behavior of some of the members of this committee. I'd like to apologize to you on behalf of the United States of America.
She's got to be stopped.
We need to rid ourselves of this ogre. I have not seen it in the first two debates. I've seen them go after Barack Obama. I've seen them go after each other. What the American people want to hear tonight, they want to hear an assault on Donald Trump.
What other constitutional right can you lose without doing anything wrong and without your knowledge?
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Howdy, and welcome to this Thursday edition of Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name, congenial, convivial, amiable, and effervescent today.
As always.
Well, at least today, anyway. Glad to have you in the conversation. Let's just jump right in what we want to do today. I do want to remind you that if you can go to afr.net, this program is streaming on Facebook right now. It's streaming on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel. It's live streaming at YouTube. Live streaming on our Facebook page. You can also go to afr.net and audio stream no matter where in the world you happen to be. So if you've got friends in the Pacific Northwest, where I am now living, and your friends, your family members are starving for some kind of conservative perspective on the news, tune them into the different ways they can stream Focal Point. They can audio stream it at afr.net. They can live stream it at YouTube. They can live stream it at Facebook. So different ways you can get hold of the program. Also at afr.net, we have podcasts that are posted every day. Today's program will be posted there at afr.net on our podcast page. Go down, find the Focal Point button, click on it, and you can listen to today's program at your leisure. Also got a brand new column up at afa.net at the stand, afa.net. It's on what I believe Neil Gorsuch is going to bring to the party as a Supreme Court justice, so that's up there at afa.net. Found today, just before we went on air, an exclusive from CNN, that John Roberts is the one who killed the censorship question. Remember, Donald Trump wanted to put a citizenship question, not censorship, a citizenship question on this year's census. Are you a citizen of the United States? If there's any question that a government has a right to ask on a census, it would be, are you a citizen of this country or not? Barack Obama had a citizenship question on the long form of the census even when he was president. We've had questions about the citizenship since 1820 on the 10-year census. And John Roberts changed his mind at the last minute, just like he did on Obamacare. Remember Obamacare, he believed it was unconstitutional. Then I guess Elena Kagan or somebody started bending his ear. Last minute, he completely switched horses in the middle of the stream and voted that Obamacare was perfectly constitutional. Now he was the deciding vote, last-minute vote, to vote against having a citizenship question on the census. I'm getting all hung up on this censorship thing. Maybe it's because I just read a piece that Facebook sanctioned Benjamin Netanyahu. He's got a Facebook page. They put him in timeout for supposed hate speech. So citizenship continues, Facebook out of control. Quick heads up before we go to the word here. There's a new tropical system that's forming in the Caribbean. It's got a nickname, or it's got a name. It's 95L. 95L. Now, here's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. And remember, you heard it here first. This is on AccuWeather.com. I went to the AccuWeather.com website. I looked at it, and the cone of this storm, 95L, is projected to have a potential impact on the state of Alabama. Just want you to know that. The cone for this tropical storm cuts the corner of Alabama. So just be advised of that little reality. All right, let's go to the Word of God, if you'd be kind enough to join me. We are in Genesis 16 and 17 today, which is a record of the birth of Ishmael. Remember, Sarah was not able to give Abraham children. God had closed her womb, and Sarah recognizes that. So Sarah was the one that said to Abraham, look, why don't you marry my servant Hagar? She'll be like a concubine or a second wife to you. And this kind of thing was legal in those days. I want you to understand that. It was legal. In fact, you look through the whole Old Testament, you don't find any condemnation outright of polygamy. That it's a sin, that it's wicked, that it's malicious. There's no prohibition on it that God delivers in the Old Testament. But what the Old Testament writers did is give us plenty of narratives like this one right here between Abraham and Sarah and her servant Hagar to let us know polygamy is a really, really terrible idea. You know, you could see some justification for polygamy. It would provide an opportunity for a widowed woman, for instance, to have the shelter and protection of a man who could provide a home for her and for her children. So you could see there would be justifications for those kind of arrangements in certain cases. It's flatly forbidden in the New Testament. Jesus says in Matthew 19, for this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and the two, one man, one woman, shall become one flesh. Paul says, 1 Corinthians 7:2, for this reason, each man should have his own wife, and each wife should have her own husband. One husband, one wife, that's a marriage. Now, so we get some of the details here in Genesis 16 and Genesis 17. So let's work through this very briefly and quickly. Again, we read that Sarah had borne him no children at the beginning, and she said this in verse 2, the Lord has prevented me from bearing children. And she was exactly right about this. Sarah understood that God is the one who opens the womb and closes the womb, and that these things happen according to his time, and in his time, and according to his timing. So anyway, Sarai, her name is still Sarai at this point, before it's changed to Sarah when she gives birth to Isaac, she suggested to Abraham that he father a child by her own servant, Hagar, who was Egyptian by ethnic heritage. Go into my servant, she says, it may be that I shall obtain children by her. Now, this wasn't a good idea because she gave birth to Ishmael. Ishmael was the child that was born of the union between Abraham and Hagar. Ishmael is the father of the Arabic peoples, which have been at war with the religion of Abraham, with the descendants of Abraham since day one. Islam is an Arabic religion. It came from the Arabic peoples, from the Arabs. So it wasn't a good idea. The whole roots of the conflict between Islam and Judaism, the conflict between Islam and the Christian West, can be traced right here to this incident right here. And we're told that Abram listened to the voice of Sarai, and that's why he did this thing. Took her advice, took her counsel. Now, is everything good about, I don't want to be misunderstood here, there's everything good about a man listening to the voice of his wife, seeking her counsel, and seeking her wisdom. The only time it's bad for a husband to listen to the voice of his wife is when God is telling him something else. Then he needs to listen to the voice of God. Now, polygamy, the reason that the scriptures are down on this, especially in the New Testament, and the reason it's presented in such an unfavorable light in the Old Testament, is that it is a breeding ground for jealousy, for rivalry, and for competition. It does not lead to harmony in the home. You know, we had a large Mormon population, still do, large Mormon population in Idaho and Utah, which is where I'm from, Idaho, and studies were done of polygamous communities. There were Mormon communities that would still engage in polygamy. They wouldn't call it that, but you'd have one man surrounded by a bevy of women who were considered to be his wives. Now, legally, he could only marry one of them. In fact, Idaho was only admitted to the Union in 1890 after we decided to put a ban on polygamy in our state constitution. So the federal government said to the state of Idaho, look, you want to come in, you're going to have to ban polygamy, and you're going to have to put it right in your Constitution. There it is, still to this day, page 1 of the Idaho State Constitution bans polygamy. And what we discovered in these polygamous communities is that they couldn't legally marry, so they would simply register their so-called wives, their second, third, fourth, fifth wives, as single mothers and put them on welfare. So the welfare system was sustaining these polygamous communes. And just a breeding ground, you know, you'd have one wife would be the favored wife, so the other wives would be disfavored. That would be painful to them, as you can imagine. Children of the favored wife would become the favored children, and that would naturally be hurtful and harmful to the children who were not favored. So that's why the New Testament just bans it all together. Biblical standard is one man, one woman, and you can see in these polygamous relationships, other major Old Testament figures had multiple wives. It never did work out. Anyway, Abram goes into to Hagar. She conceived. When she saw that she had conceived, she looked with contempt on her mistress. Literally, her mistress was dishonorable in her eyes. This is exactly why polygamy is such a bad idea. Now, Sarah tried to make it Abraham's problem by blaming it on him. He says, hey, I'm not taking this. I'm not owning any part of this. This was your idea. She is your servant, not my servant. She's your servant. She's in your power. Do to her as you please. And so the Bible says Sarah dealt harshly with her, so harshly that Hagar ran off. Then the angel of the Lord found Hagar by a spring of water in the wilderness, got Hagar to admit she was on the run, and the angel said to Hagar, return to your mistress and submit to her. You know, we talked the other day about how sometimes in business or in ministry, separation is the thing that makes for peace. But there are times when we will want out of a bad situation, and God says, I want you to hang in there, and I want you to continue to show proper respect to the authority or the authorities that I have placed in your life, as tough as it may be. And he promises Hagar that there will be something in it for her if she obeys. I will surely multiply your offspring so that they cannot be numbered for multitude. So God says, you hang in there when I direct you to. When I ask you to, there will be a reward in it for you. I will enrich your life. I will prosper you. I will bless you in ways you could not have imagined. So God goes to her and speaks to her, and Hagar says to God, you are a God of seeing. You are the God who sees me. Truly, she said, I have seen him who sees me or looks after me. The verb to see can mean to look after. You know, when we say, hey, would you look after my dog this weekend? Would you look after my kids? We're not saying, would you just look at them? We're saying, would you look after them? And Hagar realized God was the one who was looking after her. So, but anyway, God tells her, look, your son Ishmael will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand will be against him. And today the descendants of Ishmael still cannot get along with anybody. They cannot even get along with other descendants of Ishmael. The Sunnis can't get along with the Shias and so forth. Let's go to prayer if you'd be kind enough to join me. Lord God Almighty, I bring myself and my family, the listening audience of Focal Point and American Family Radio before you this day. And I ask, Lord, for your favor. I pray that you will enable each of us, as you enabled Hagar, to bear up under unjust accusation and unfair treatment, and to act with strength and not with passivity in such circumstances. May we be worthy of the respect of those closest to us. When we are mistreated, please strengthen us so that we will not run away. Please strengthen us that we may properly submit to the authority over us, that you may bless us in return. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Howdy, and welcome back to Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on Conservative Talk Radio. My name is Brian Fisher, your host. Great to have you along for the ride today. Let's go right to our Read Report to start this segment. Jeff Reed. And Jeff, you came across a story which is kind of interesting to me. It ties into some other things I want to say, even what we just talked about. But talk to us about what researchers are learning about teens and dating patterns.
Yeah, the University of Georgia came out with a study, or they endeavored into a study about the normal time where teenagers start dating and start getting involved with members of the opposite sex. And they studied children from grade 6 to 12, and they found out by the study that the average time that somebody gets romantically involved was 15 to 17. And that wasn't real surprising. But then, just kind of as a side note, they decided to see if those that were not romantically involved at all, or very rarely, if they were less stable or less sociable and socially adjusted and stuff like that. And what they found out was that the majority of teenagers that did no dating or very, very seldom were actually as well socially adjusted or better. And that really caught them off guard. They still haven't come to a conclusion of why that is, but it was a shocking discovery on their part. They also, had questionnaires for the children, and then they also asked questions of the teachers of their observations of teenagers that were either dating or not dating. And the teachers as well said that the students that did no dating or very rarely were either better adjusted socially and less depressed. There was all the way around seemed to be much better off.
Well, the Song of Solomon repeatedly says this: do not awaken love until it pleases. Don't just fall for the first thing that comes across your path. And I have a theory we talked about this morning in our production meeting. I've got a theory that when couples get sexually involved outside of marriage, sexual immorality, it freezes their relationship right at that point. Their relationship cannot develop past the point where they get sexually involved. Now, in marriage, sexual union contributes to the marriage. The marriage flourishes. It grows as they share the intimacy, but it will freeze dry a dating relationship once sex becomes a part of it. It's interesting. I'm looking at this story here from studyfinds.org indicating that what the most important thing to look for, they say, is a nice and pleasant partner. That's the most important thing you want to find in a partner. Are they a nice person? Do they have a lot of anxiety? Those things matter a lot more than the fact that two people may have a similar personality. Are they kind? Are they decent? Are they honorable people? Jeff?
Yeah, and going back to this study, the findings in this, I have a theory about that too. It kind of goes along with what you're saying. I think before the 60s and the sexual revolution, a lot of teenagers were actually looking for their spouses in high school, that they were married soon after that. Well, that's not the case anymore. I mean, when people start dating in high school, I don't think that they're looking for a spouse at that point. Things have changed, and I think we're seeing problems within the children with depression and being less socially adjusted because of that. There's not the marriage component going on here.
Yeah, to provide the security and to provide the commitment. All right, appreciate that, Jeff. So, Song of Solomon was right all along. Do not awaken love until it pleases. Do not awaken love before the time is right. All right, let's grab a couple of Neil Gorsuch clips. My column is up, as I mentioned. It's on why I believe Neil Gorsuch is going to help us recover, recapture, reclaim the Founders Constitution. You can read it right now at afa.net. Right up there. I encourage you to read it, share it with other people that may be interested in that subject. But Neil Gorsuch did an interview with CNN with Ariane DeVoe, who apparently is their court reporter there. And I just picked out 3 or 4 sound bites from her interview because I think they illustrate something about where the left is coming from when they look at the Supreme Court and where Neil Gorsuch is coming from when he looks at the Constitution. Let's go to clip number 7.
I say this country is owned by we the people. We wrote a Constitution. We put down what we wanted to put in it. We can amend it when we wish. And it is not up to 9 people to tell 330 million Americans how to live.
That is a great statement. It is not up to 9, actually 5. All you need is a majority of 5. And you can tell 330 million Americans how to live. Neil Gorsuch says, look, that's just not right. It's not constitutional. It's not what the founders had in mind at all. And right here is telling people how to live. That's what regressives do. They have so little regard for us. They think we're just a bunch of nabobs, a bunch of yahoos, a bunch of uneducated, ignorant hicks from the sticks, that we cannot be trusted to manage the affairs of our own lives. So they want to make all those important decisions for us. Kamala Harris wants to ban certain dietary choices for us. She wants to tell us what we can and cannot eat. Let's go to Beto O'Rourke. Rob, this is clip number J2. Now, Beto wants to be our president, and here's what he had to say.
Rich people are going to have to allow or be forced to allow lower income people to live near them.
People are going to have to be forced to live where I choose for them to live. As president, I will decide for you where you can and cannot live. I will decide what neighborhood you should live in. I will decide for you who your neighbors ought to be. Do you think anything remotely that resembles liberty in that? But that's how regressives and that's how liberals think. All right, let's go back to the Neil Gorsuch interview with Ariane DeVoe. Clip number 8.
But what if some of those people, for instance, in the same-sex marriage debate, said, look, there were some states that were never going to allow same-sex marriage. We needed the court to step in.
Well, I'd say to you, you can make arguments for any case you have of any kind about the original meaning of the Constitution. It is not a judge's job to do whatever he or she thinks would be good. Do you really want me to rule the country?
Well, in your book, you address this, and you say, under originalism, individuals don't have to worry about judges changing their rights willy-nilly.
Exactly. If you want to change the Constitution, you can do it.
What is your response to people who say that takes time, takes a nationwide consensus?
I say get involved. This is supposed to be a republic of we the people. You're supposed to be able to control your fate. Is it supposed to be hard to make change? Of course it is. Do we want social consensus and the best ideas? Of course we do. It is a raucous republic. And a battle of ideas is what our founders had in mind.
You know, and what Ariane DeVoe here, CNN says, reveals perfectly the regressive mindset. In other words, they're panicked at the thought that they have lost their 5-seat majority on the Supreme Court because that's how they get everything they want. And she's basically admitting it. Look, there are states that are never going to embrace same-sex marriage. They're never going to pass laws that recognize same-sex marriage. So that's where we need judges, the Supreme Court, to step in and order them to embrace same-sex marriage in their public policy. And that's what the left has been doing since 1947. They've had a majority of 5. That's the thing that's rough for the regressives right now, is they no longer have 5 judges in their hip pocket. I mean, they might be getting John Roberts the way he's going. He may wind up in their back pocket. But this is how they can't get it through Congress. They can't get what they want by going to the elected officials, so they're going to get it by going to 5 unelected guys that sit on the United States Supreme Court, not the way things were designed. You know, and Gorsuch says, look, the way you do this, like with same-sex marriage, this is the same exact deal. If you want same-sex marriage, the Constitution makes no provision for it at all. In fact, the Constitution doesn't address marriage at all. That's an issue for the states. Supreme Court even said that in 1972. There's no federal issue here when it came to a state law about marriage. That's for the states to decide under our Constitution. But if you want it to be different, if you want everybody in America to be forced to comply with sodomy-based marriage, then you can go amend the Constitution. If you can get the majority of the American people to agree with you, then yeah, you can impose that on the American people. We, the people, will be doing that to ourselves. Now what we have is judges imposing decisions against the will of the people, limiting their right to choice. You know, and again, this is how regressives have thrived. They got 5 people on the court. It did not matter then. They got 5 people on the court. It doesn't matter what the other 329,999,995 people think. They are going to be told how to live. All right, let's go to clip number 9. Another question from an exchange between Ariane DeVoe and Justice Neil Gorsuch.
So to the people who say, this court is going to move, they're going to overturn precedent, and now they're 5 solid members, we could see a hard right turn.
I just don't view judges that way. I reject that idea of how judges operate. As we talked about earlier, about 40% of our cases are decided unanimously. We talked about the 5-4 cases. They make up a quarter of our docket, maybe a third. Those numbers have been consistent since the Second World War. The only thing that's new is that nothing is new.
Well, the only thing that's new, Justice Gorsuch, is that regressives don't have 5 Supreme Court justices in their back pocket. That's what's new. You know, and she's complaining about the court taking a hard right turn. Well, I'm kind of paraphrasing C.S. Lewis here, but if you have gone way too far to the left, if you're out in the weeds because you have turned to the left, what do you need to do? You need to make a hard right turn if you're ever going to get back on the path. All right, clip number 10. Let's listen.
Some people do think things have changed. When you say nothing has changed, now there are solid 5 conservative members on the court. Something has changed.
Yeah, to my mind, it hasn't. The wonder of the rule of law in this country is its consistency over time. And as troublesome as sometimes our times may seem, and as difficult as they may appear to us, this country has been through a lot of challenges and always risen resiliently to them, whether it's the civil rights movement, surviving through our Civil War, or today's challenges. Whatever they may be, I've got great confidence in America. And I say to those who don't, look elsewhere. Where else would you rather be?
Where else would you rather be? You know, I've told this story before. I played some basketball after college, pickup basketball, with a guy who was a guard for the Golden State Warriors back when they were still the San Francisco Warriors. And after his NBA career, he became a missionary and went all over the world as a missionary. And we were talking, this is 1973, something like that, and we were talking about the unrest on campus at Stanford where I went. We had National Guard on our campus at different times to keep things under control. And he said, the thing that he said struck me as I talked to college students, the college students that hate America have never lived anywhere else. And that's why Neil Gorsuch's question is a good one. Where else would you rather be? Now, Ariane DeVoe, she's wringing her hands. She said this later in the newscast where she introduced these clips. You see, he is a solid conservative. He allowed the travel ban to go into effect. That doesn't make him conservative. That just makes him a constitutionalist. Because the law that Congress passed, which is what it's entitled to do by the Constitution, entitles the president to decide who comes into this country and who doesn't. And if the president decides that there are a group of immigrants, a group of migrants that are contrary, whose presence would be contrary to the interests of the United States, he can ban them just because he thinks it would be a bad idea. He doesn't have to get permission from anybody to do that. And Donald Trump rightly banned immigration from any of 7 Muslim countries that are hotbeds of terrorism. You know, and she said this, complaining about Neil Gorsuch being an originalist, she said this, a lot has changed since 1787, such as the abolishment of slavery and women's suffrage. Well, she just illustrated Gorsuch's point. How did we get rid of slavery? How did we abolish slavery? We amended the Constitution. The 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment abolished slavery. And it gave them civil rights and it gave them voting rights, former slaves. That's how you do it. You do it by amending the Constitution. And women's suffrage. How did we deal with women's suffrage? We passed the 19th Amendment that granted universal suffrage. So she's trying to argue against Gorsuch and just illustrating his point. This is how we do things under a constitutional republic, not by judicial fiat from 9 judges. So anyway, Gorsuch, I believe, has a chance to be a real difference maker on the United States Supreme Court. You know, I read through their ruling on the Bladensburg Cross last night. There's 87 pages of stuff, and it was kind of confusing at places. But the bottom line is that the Supreme Court ruled 7-2 in that case that a cross gets to stay. The cross doesn't have to come down. It's consistent with our traditions as a people. It's consistent with the free exercise clause of religion, and therefore the cross gets to stay. I mean, I think a Supreme Court under the previous administration would have yanked that thing out of the ground so fast it'd make your nose bleed. So anyway, that's good news. Neil Gorsuch, I believe, is going to be a great addition to the United States Supreme Court. Then we come back, we are going to talk a little bit about the Democratic debate tonight and kind of the state of affairs politically for the Democrats. I'm not going to watch the debate. I just want to alert you to that. I'm going to let other people watch the debate for me and identify the sound bites that are the most interesting and illustrative, and I will just hitchhike. I am not ashamed to say it. I will hitchhike off of their work. So if you don't want to watch the debate, you got some good company. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Like, I wanted to have the abortion because I was trying to hide the situation.
When a young mom in crisis walks into a preborn pregnancy center, she's welcomed with open arms and given love, support, and a free ultrasound to meet her unborn baby. This young woman not only chose life for her baby, but heard the message of Jesus Christ and was comforted from the guilt and pain that plagued her. Preborn centers lead the nation in providing free ultrasounds. When an abortion-minded woman sees her baby on ultrasound, she's 80% more likely to choose life.
Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Howdy, and welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio, the home of the fastest 60 minutes in American media. Hitting the home stretch here. We'll take your phone calls, talk about anything that we have talked about on the program today. That's the limitation. If we've talked about it on the program today, you are welcome to talk about it. We talked about dating. We talked about polygamy. We've talked about the Supreme Court. We've talked about the citizenship question on the census. And we're going to talk about the debate tonight, some economic issues, or anything we've talked about. It's just got to be something that we've talked about on the program today. The number to call is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Got the debate coming up tonight. Some problems for...
And by the way, Brian, as far as the debate, Snopes has issued a pre-approval of all statements made during tonight's Democratic debate. It marked them all as true.
Okay, so anything a Democrat says...
Yeah, they're getting out ahead of this one.
Yeah, Snopes says, hey, we're just going to anticipate. They're all going to be marked true.
Yeah.
So don't waste your time wondering about what they say. It's all true. Whatever they say is all true. All right, Elizabeth Warren, she's got some problems with her heritage. I mean, she does have ancestors, but they weren't Cherokee. Her ancestors fought against the Indians. Her great-great-great-grandfather, Jonathan Crawford, fought the Seminoles in Florida in 2 different battles. And then you've got another one of her ancestors was in the militia and actually participated in the Trail of Tears. He actually helped round up Cherokees and put them on the Trail of Tears. So that's kind of stuff that Elizabeth Warren, I think, is not going to want to come out. And there won't be anybody who's going to bring that up tonight. I can flat out guarantee you. All right. Fast Eddie Rendell. Rob, I'm getting some feedback. Where's that coming from? Is that on my end?
It's coming from your phone. My call back in, you'll have to mute.
Okay, all right. Maybe that's the problem. I didn't mute.
Yeah, that's where.
Oh, here we go. Okay, got it taken care of.
See, you got rid of me.
My bad. All my fault. I'd like to blame it on Rob, but I can't. And if Rob hadn't spoken up and explained how the whole thing was my fault, I could have done it. But that's what happens with this crew. All right, Fast Eddie Rendell, former governor of Pennsylvania, he slammed Liz Warren today. By the way, I've told you Liz Warren is going to be the Democratic nominee. You can make bank on that. Joe Biden is dropping like a rock. Too many gaffes. He's an old guy. The Democrats want somebody that looks younger. Elizabeth Warren is 70 years old herself. She looks younger than that, but she's not that much younger than Biden or Sanders. But the Democrats want somebody younger. They want a female. Remember, speaking of the 19th Amendment, the 100th anniversary of the passage of the amendment that gave women the vote is going to be on August 20, 2020, right in the middle of the presidential campaign. They want a woman to be in that slot when that anniversary day comes. That's going to be Liz Warren. But anyway, Fast Eddie Rendell said, look, this is what he said about her. I like Elizabeth Warren. I like her a lot. Too bad she's a hypocrite. And the reason he says she's a hypocrite is she's made a big deal out of the fact that she depends on small donors. Her base is small donors, but Eddie Rendell points out that she transferred at one point $10.5 million from her Senate reelection fund into her presidential campaign fund, which is perfectly legal to do, but $6 million of that came from large donors. So she's trying to have it both ways. She just doesn't want you to know what you just found out, that she has depended on large donors. So don't believe anything different than that. The Democrats want to, well, let's get a couple more clips in before we go to the phones. 888-589-8840 is the number, 888-589-8840. Let's listen to clip number 1. This is Marianne Williamson. She is this kind of hippy-dippy spiritualist guru that's running for the Democrat presidential election, and consequently she's been on the stage with these people. She's been in the green room with these people. She's interacted with her fellow Democrat candidates, and here's what she had to say. This was a hot mic moment on a program called Sinclair's America This Week with Eric Bolling, used to be on Fox News. Here's what she said on a hot mic.
What does it say that Fox News is nicer to me than the lefties are?
I'm sorry?
What does it say that the conservatives are nicer to me?
It's a bizarre world, ma'am.
It's such a bizarre world. I'm such a lefty. I'm a serious lefty. But I understand why people on the right call them godless. It's like, I didn't think the left was as mean as the right. They are.
It's been a wake-up call for Marianne. This is not the first time she's said something like this. I had no idea. I thought we were the compassionate ones. I thought we were the tolerant ones. Now I'm finding out it's the right. The people that we've been taught to hate, they're the ones that are nice. They're nicer than us. Fox News is nicer than CNN. By the way, their ratings are in the tank again. MSNBC has lost 31% of their audience since this same time a year ago, and CNN has lost 26%. So they continue to drop through the basement. All right, let's grab clip number R1. This is Bill Maher, and this is Bill Maher. Now, he's a guy's a hardcore leftist. This is his take on Elizabeth Warren, clip R1.
I love Elizabeth Warren, but she does scare me a little bit because, again, all we have to do to win this election is not be scarier to people than Donald Trump.
and Bill Maher is saying, look, Elizabeth Warren is not being less scary than Donald Trump. She is being as scary as Donald Trump, maybe even more. She came out with a deal today where she wants to raise everybody that's on Social Security. She wants to give them a $200 a month bump. Where's she going to get the money? She is going to soak the rich. So this is, let's tax Peter to pay Paul. Why does she do that? Why does she want to tax Peter, the rich, to pay Paul, everybody else? Because she knows if you tax Peter to pay Paul, you can always count on the support of Paul. It's just a shameless bribe for senior citizens, and the top 2% are going to be soaked again. Eventually, Elizabeth Warren is going to run out of their money. All right, one more soundbite here before we go to the phones. 888-589-8840 is the number. Here is clip number 2. This is Jim Cramer talking about what he's hearing about Elizabeth Warren from people on Wall Street and in the banking industry.
If she becomes president, what do you think is going to happen to the banks?
Well, it would be a suboptimal situation for the banks.
You think Elizabeth Warren pushes banks into it? Well, they're already down 20% from the highs, but...
Yeah, I just think that there were these hearings in the 30s where they brought rich people in front of Congress and just kind of trashed them. It was effective. I don't know what's going to happen. Look, I've got to tell you, when you get off the desk and you talk to executives, they're more fearful of her winning. I mean, I've never heard anybody say, look, she's got to be stopped. She's got to be stopped. I don't know. She's very...
That's good, Rob. We heard all that we need to do. She's got to be stopped. She's got to be stopped. That's what people on Wall Street are saying. And realize, I don't know what you think about Wall Street or the banks, but realize 35% of Americans have money in stocks. A lot of them in 401ks and stuff. I mean, you go after Wall Street, you hurt Wall Street, you're hurting average Americans. You're just not going to nick the rich people. You're going to get average Americans that are trying to save up for their retirement. All right, well, let's go to the phones. Let's grab a call from Kay in Texas. Remember, you can talk about anything we've talked about on the program today. Kay, what's on your mind?
John Roberts, I cannot believe that he has turned what we wanted him in there for. I was just heartbroken when he allowed Obamacare to go in. But I even gave him a little benefit of the doubt that he was hoping that the people would not vote for anybody that would allow that, but they did. Mm-hmm. But now, with this last thing, I thought he was a good guy. It makes me think of God. If you're not warm, I can't remember the words exactly, but you're so lukewarm that God spews you out of his mouth.
Yeah. Well, listen, I appreciate the call, Kay, and I think you have a valid a point there in that, he caved on Obamacare. He was originally on the side of the Constitution. Obamacare is unconstitutional. And he was originally on the right side of the citizenship question. We had citizenship questions since 1820. And he flipped, somehow or other, And the thing you have to think about, it wasn't the arguments that people made, because after they had discussed it, after arguments had been presented, they go back in chambers and they vote right away. I mean, first thing they do is vote where do you come out. And in both cases, he voted the right way, and then something turned his head around. I don't know what it is. Maybe he's too conscious of his place in judicial history and is trying to guess what decision he needs to make so he look best as he possibly can in the eyes of historians, I really don't know. But it is, as you say, very troublesome. All right, let's grab a call from Michael in Arkansas. Michael, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Oh, I just wanted to comment on the judge you were talking about earlier. I think it's Corsi, and him being a literal constitutionalist. I
Yeah,
think the biggest problem
Gorsuch. His name is Gorsuch. 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 All right, go ahead.
we need more. We need a lot more of those. They should require everyone who seeks political office, Supreme Court, anything that has anything to do with power, and make them take a civics course before they can even run. And they got to make at least 100.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And they'll stop tearing up all of our laws.
Yeah, or give them a test on the Constitution. You know, one of the things I was encouraged, this is going back to the ruling they issued on the Bladensburg Cross case. That was 7-2, by the way. And I was pleased to read again Clarence Thomas. I mean, it sounded just like the stuff I've been saying for years, that the first word in the First Amendment is Congress. And what Clarence Thomas is saying, maybe we need to reconsider this whole deal about whether Congress means government at any level, because it doesn't. You know, the founders meant Congress. They were tying the hands of Congress, not the states. States could do anything they want when it came to religious liberty. It was only the federal government that could not establish the church. States were free to do it, and many of them did. 10 of the first 13 did have established states. All right, thank you, Michael. I agree. We need 9 Neil Gorsuches on the Supreme Court. You know, and it's not to say that Neil Gorsuch is going to be a perfect justice. He'll probably disappoint us at some point. I think every other justice just about, except maybe for Clarence Thomas and Antonin Scalia and Sam Alito, everyone has disappointed us in one way or another. So let's hope he'll stay true to his convictions. All right, let's go to Josh in Oklahoma. Josh, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Oh, well, God bless you, and God bless this country. And I just want to say that, first, the Democratic debates. Like, I feel like they all just pick talking points, and then it's like bulletin points that are just boring. You know, they want to say taxation of the rich, give back to the poor, we're the working class people's champion. But the last time that they taxed the rich as high as they did, as I recall, a lot of them left the states, and then what did that end up doing? That started taxing more of the middle class. So they try to confuse the younger generation by saying, oh, we're socialists, without talking about any of the negatives of socialism. And so, like, that money has to come from somewhere, and it sure is not going to come from the top 2%, because when you start passing all these laws, they'll start going somewhere else. They'll apply for citizenship there like they did before, and then what top 2% is going to go right back onto middle America.
Yeah.
So those are my comments.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I appreciate that, Josh. Let's take one last call from Roger in hang on, Roger. Roger in Arkansas. Welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Good evening, Brian. Hey,
Howdy.
I was reading an article this morning that said in the debate tonight, reparations would most surely be brought up. Well, I have a thought on it, and I just want to get your opinion. There were approximately 360,000 Union people who gave the ultimate sacrifice to end slavery. Approximately 40,000 of that number were from our black community. Now, it looks to me like if anyone should be entitled to receive reparations, it would be the descendants of the ones who gave the ultimate sacrifice, both black and white.
Well, I'm into that. I can't argue with that. If we're going to do reparations at all, those are the people that ought to have the most to repair, because their families lost their loved one forever in a war that was intended to bring to an end the institution of slavery. You know, and my feeling on this, Roger, and I appreciate your call. Thank you for that. You know, my feeling on this is that reparations have already been paid. Reparations have already been paid in full. What do you do to repair? If you're going to repair something, what do? You got to fix what's wrong. We repaired slavery by abolishing it. We repaired the loss of civil rights by entitling them to civil rights in the 14th Amendment. We got rid of the voting disenfranchisement by enshrining their right to vote in the 15th Amendment. That's how you do it. We've done it. We have transferred immense amounts of wealth to minority communities through welfare programs. Reparations, ladies and gentlemen, in my view, have been paid in full. All right, well, that's the end of the program today. Don't forget to bow low before God, stand tall before man, stand in the gap, and never forget we are fighting a winnable war.